If you've ever been through a breakup with an avoidant, it can feel like they're the ones calling all of the shots. Your emotions, thoughts, and feelings are totally based on how they're treating you that day. Are they stonewalling you? Are they breadcrumb texting you? Their ambivalence mixed with your lack of boundaries is the perfect storm that throws your entire life into chaos. It's troublesome, feeling like someone else has so much emotional power over you that you're not sure you will be able to stand up for yourself when the day comes that they're like, hey, what are you doing tonight? It's even more concerning when no matter how much damage this person has done to you in the past, you still feel like you can't ignore them. You still feel like you have to answer them. It feels so unfair whenever people reach out to us, we're always there for them. But on the days that we could really use some comforting ourselves, well, they're conveniently busy. Hello, friends. My name is Maria, and for almost 20 years, everyone else got to be the boss of me. When I was in a relationship with someone, I let their mood dictate what kind of mood I was going to be in that day. I let them decide whether or not we were going to text each other that day. I let them decide whether or not we were going to go out on a date that weekend. And when they inevitably broke up with me, they got to decide whether or not they could come back into my life. I never got to decide any of that because I never gave myself permission to have boundaries. Not having clear boundaries in my dating life was a huge reason why, if someone would break up with me, I would get so much anxiety over the mere thought of what if they text me? Because even though I knew that relationship wasn't healthy and it wasn't even fun anymore, I did not trust myself to hold any kind of a boundary and say, no, this is not for me. Something happened to us along the way where we got this idea that we always had to explain ourselves. We always had to answer to people, like they had some kind of authority over us, like they were the boss of us. And if you're like me and you are tired of entitled people who do not have your best interest at heart being the boss of you, then grab a bottle of nail polish and let's talk. Do you want to know one of the biggest red flags that tells me a relationship is no longer healthy for you? When you are completely freaked out about one text message that your ex has never even sent you yet. It's a hypothetical text message in the future, but the mere thought of them reaching out sends a physiological stress response shooting through your entire body. One of the things I've learned about anxiety is we get the most anxious over scenarios when we think about them and we don't know how to solve them. So if your ex reaches out and you have not figured out how you even feel about it or what your boundaries are or how you're going to respond to this situation, yeah, you're gonna be pretty stressed out. I got a question I'd like to answer today from a viewer who I will call Jasmine. Jasmine has been tangled up with this guy for 4 years. He's not treating her very well. He's been pulling away, and the last time she asked him out, he said, you know, my schedule's really busy right now, but it'll free up soon. And she hasn't heard from him in weeks. She knows she's not being treated fairly in this relationship. It's all about his timeline and what's convenient for him. And even though there's a part of her that does not necessarily want to talk to him anymore, she was asking how should she respond the day that he inevitably reaches back out to her. And Jasmine, the first thing I will say is when you wrote to me, you used quotation marks in the word dating. And that is a pretty big signal that you didn't even have, in the 4 years that you were with him, you had absolutely no emotional solid ground in that relationship. Now, one of the specific questions that Jasmine asked is this guy an avoidant or is he simply not interested? And Jasmine, I'm going to answer your question with a question, and I do not mean for this to sound sarcastic in any kind of way. I want you to really think about the answer to this question. What does it matter? Because I'll bet either way, you're not getting the relationship that you really want. If you think about it, you're kind of signing up for the same exact thing, no matter what the answer is, because an avoidant guy probably is not going to be there for you if you have a particularly bad day at work, and neither is a guy who's uninterested in you romantically. So that's how I first wanted to address that part of the letter where you said, is he avoidant or is he uninterested? Look at the way that you're being treated. This guy hasn't talked to you in weeks and maybe you can get together soon. Honestly, what does it matter? In either scenario, you deserve more. One of the other things you ask that tells me a lot about you is you say that you want to be done. You specifically said, when he reaches out, I want to ignore him. I'm going to ignore him. I want to be done. Is this what I should do? And I just want to say, I am incredibly sorry for whatever has happened to you in your life that's made you feel like you can't make these decisions for yourself. There is nothing wrong with asking other people for help. In fact, if this guy does reach out to you and you haven't had a lot of time to do the work on yourself that I'm going to suggest at the end of this video, then I would absolutely reach out to people who you know that you can trust not to steer you in a bad direction. I mean, this guy's left you hanging for weeks. You don't have to respond to him right away. In fact, you don't have to respond to him at all. And that is the place that mentally you should be. We grow up and we're taught that regardless of how we think or feel about things, we don't have a choice, or we have to be nice and kind to people and greet them no matter how we feel about the situation. We never learned what boundaries are, and we never got the chance to decide for ourselves. And doesn't it make you feel a little guilty flat out ignoring someone, even though a lot of times when we're in relationships with people who have avoidant tendencies or going through a breakup with them, we could reach out to them and make bids for their attention, and they certainly don't have a problem ignoring us. Now, I'm not saying that we should stoop to their level, but I am saying that you have the right to not text someone back. And Jasmine, when you wrote to me, you said that this relationship, this guy, has ruined your life for the last 4 years. You will know whether or not it's right to text this guy back once you establish your boundaries. Let me tell you a story about a juice bar that I used to own. I hired a girl. She was beautiful. She was friendly. I thought she would be perfect, but it didn't take long before the atmosphere started to feel really toxic. And later I found out that she was one of those people who loved to start drama, and she was telling other employees lies about things that I was saying about them that I never said. It was completely destroying the camaraderie among my employees and destroying my relationship with them. Now, I did tell that girl that she had to hit the road, but a couple of months later, as toxic people tend to do, she popped back into my life over a text message telling me that she didn't like the way that things ended between us and she was wondering if we could talk. Now, Jasmine, at that time in my life, that business was my life. So essentially you could say that for whatever reason, she had tried to ruin my life. And I am telling you, you wrote to me because you said you liked my opinion, and here is my opinion. Life ruiners don't get the courtesy of a text back. When we have struggled with dysfunctional relationships in the past, it gives us this weird, I once heard it described as free-floating guilt. It's this unnecessary free-floating guilt that we get when we're just used to being people pleasers. And you have those hamster wheel thoughts like, what if ignoring him is disrespectful? What if I'm being a bitch? What if he thinks I'm being a bitch? What if it makes me a mean person? And all the guilty feelings. Well, here's the beautiful part about it. You don't have to feel guilty about anything, because this is 0% about disrespecting him and 100% about having respect for yourself. You're anxious about this guy texting you because, as you said, You want to be done. Your spirit is ready to be done, but I'll bet you don't trust that you're not going to text him back. I totally get it. So here is what you do. You start the process of being able to trust yourself, and you start with very small things. You start with telling yourself you're going to do something, and then you do it. For example, with me, I tell myself I'm going to do 20 minutes of cardio today, and then come hell or high water, I do that 20 minutes. And then when the 20 minutes is done, I stop. Because the next time I don't feel like working out and I tell myself it's only 20 minutes, I want to be able to trust that I will do the work for 20 minutes and then I'll stop. I do what I tell myself I'm going to do, and that's how I start to build trust with myself. And you do these small things, and they're like building blocks. And that way, by the time this guy texts you, if you've already told yourself, if he texts me, I'm not going to text him back, there won't be any anxiety over it, because you've told yourself that you're not going to text him back, and you trust yourself. You've given yourself evidence that you are trustworthy. And you can trust yourself, because the fact that you know you don't want to talk to this guy anymore, your gut is in the right place. If anyone in the comments has had experience with a toxic or an avoidant ex coming back, and maybe you answered them and you regretted it, or you did have the strength to ignore them and you were elated about it, please be brave enough to leave a comment to give Jasmine some encouragement. This is a situation that I think everyone on this channel has had to go through. And if you have a relationship question, I try to answer you and interact with you as much as I can in the comments, and I answer the questions for free, but I do have a super thanks. So if a particular video ever touches you and you feel moved to make a donation, any amount to the channel is always appreciated. Okay, Jasmine, here is part 2 on how you can start going through life without feeling like other people are the boss of you. When people reach out to us, even when we know they're not going to give us everything we want, we take what we can get, because we're like, well, it's this or it's nothing. And you know what I say? Great. Take the nothing and let me introduce you to nothing. It's your blank slate. This is a blank slate that you get to write down any boundary you want. And in your future relationships, if those people have a problem with your boundaries, well, I guess that's their problem. And I want you to be really specific about what you are looking for in relationships. The list is about your boundaries for what you want and how you want to be treated in relationships. These are the deal breakers. This is not the time to make a list that is superficial, because welcome to the other half, where we know attraction is not just about looks. We also have to take care of the inner half, because no matter how beautiful your couple pictures look on social media, if what you've got going on the inside is someone who accepts poor treatment, letting someone else walk all over you, that beautiful relationship is going to get ugly and gross. So I've already given you an example of one of my deal-breaking boundaries. Life ruiners don't get the courtesy of a text back. Also, I noticed you said you were the one doing all of the initiating. That became a big deal breaker for me. That was definitely a boundary. No more being the only one initiating while dating. Here's a big boundary that you kind of touched on in your letter. And for me, it was no more relationships where guys could only tell me that they loved me or only be brave with me about how they really feel about me if they were intoxicated. You mentioned that this guy struggled to even tell you in 4 years that he loved you. So there you go. You have nothing to feel guilty about. You don't owe this guy anything. But you can also have smaller boundaries too. If you're dating somebody, you don't, here's the ticket though. You don't tell them this boundary. Like, you never want to be in a dating situation where you have to tell someone, hey, I need you to text me at least once a week, or I need you to text me at least once a day. You decide what you're comfortable with in a relationship and let people show you how they're going to show up in a relationship. And then you refer back to your boundaries and what your deal breakers are, and you're like, I've been dating this guy and he says we can go on a date soon, but he hasn't texted me in 2.5 weeks. That's not okay with me. And it says it right here. So you don't have to make a last minute, stress-induced, dysregulated decision when this guy does finally reach out to you after 3 weeks and just make a knee-jerk decision out of fear and run out on a date with him. No, you look back at your list and you're like, I wanted to be with someone who was at least interested enough in me to want to talk to me once a day or once a week or whatever you decide, Jasmine. This is about you. No more revolving your life and your decisions around other people, especially people who aren't even there for you. But if you want a guy who's there for you, if you want a guy who is the kind of guy who would be there for you if you did have a bad day, who would talk to you on the phone about it, write it down. And if you work on building trust with yourself and you have these boundaries to anchor you for when he does inevitably reach back out, you'll find that you don't need anyone else's advice anymore. You've already made the decision with a clear and sober head. You know, when I very first found your page, I had no idea that you were a viewer. I didn't even realize that you knew I had a YouTube channel. And when I first saw something that you posted, I clicked on it because it was so much fun. I wanted to see more of what you were all about. You do not need this guy, because if I, as a perfect stranger, can think, oh my gosh, this girl's so cool, I want to get to know her better, on a random Tuesday afternoon, plenty of other people who meet you will think the same exact thing. Don't get trapped in a scarcity mindset focusing on this one guy. Don't let someone who is not giving you anything cost you the opportunity of someone who could possibly give you everything. Everything that you decide you want on your list. I guarantee you, if you could take a guy that emotionally jerked you around for 4 years and tell him to stuff it, you will have so much of a sense of freedom because he's the final boss. No more bosses. You'll have more confidence in yourself, and the next time someone thinks they can just come in and out of your life and they're going to start dictating what kind of relationship you're going to experience with them, you can just say, "Don't you bossa nova me around," by OPI. My name is Maria Adriana. You did not have to live my life, but I certainly hope you can learn something from it. As always, thank you for visiting The Other Half.